Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sparred during question period over the opioid crisis taking place in BC. Lethbridge Conservative MP Rachel Thomas explains why she's upset about being kicked out of the House of Commons this week. And it's a dream come true for a former Lethbridge football player who's been drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals of the NFL.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre once again asked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to do an about-face when it comes to the legalization of hard drugs in British Columbia. Poilievre says the Liberal policy in that province is killing far too many people.
He made the decision to exempt hard drugs from the criminal law so that it became legal to smoke meth or crack in a hospital room, including around nurses who are breastfeeding their kids. This has caused chaos, and 6 British Columbians are dying every day that he delays. So will he announce that as of today, he's changed his mind and he's reversing his legalization of hard drugs in BC, yes or no?
A number of years ago, British Columbia approached us with a pilot project that they wanted to bring in to look at a different way of dealing with the ongoing public health crisis that was hitting British Columbia around the opioid epidemic. We worked with them as they developed this pilot project, and now that they are asking for modifications to that project, we are looking at those modifications, and we will work with BC as they seek to adjust their plans around public health and around dealing with this opioid epidemic.
Lethbridge Conservative MP Rachel Thomas is pretty upset. She says it appears as though the House of Commons records were altered to support the House Speaker, Greg Fergus's partisan decision to kick her out of question period this week. She called the handling of the House disgraceful. And when asked by the Speaker to withdraw those words, she said she did, but says they were deleted from the records. The Speaker, Greg Fergus, says he did not hear MP Thomas say she withdrew her words.
As you know, I was removed from the chamber for the remainder of the day, and I was prohibited from being able to participate in debate or vote on behalf of the constituents who have sent me here. Therefore, the constituents of Lethbridge were robbed of having a presence and a voice in the House of Commons, their democratic right. It was especially egregious given the fact that there was a scheduled vote immediately following question period that day. If you go to the House of Commons site, the blues, unfortunately, are no longer available. Interesting. Which makes a person curious as to why. If you attempt to access the blues today, you will get this message, quote, "Blues are available while the House is in session until the Hansard is published." The blues are taken down. Luckily, though, Mr. Speaker, for you, I kept a copy of those blues that were sent to me yesterday at the end of the day, and I have them available to submit to you here.
Interesting.
And I will just point out that if we flip through them, on this page here, you can see my words are kindly highlighted for you.
Wow.
Now, despite pressure from both the Conservatives and the Bloc to step down, House Speaker Greg Fergus says he will do no such thing. Student protesters who have set up a pro-Palestinian encampment at the University of Toronto say they've spent the past half a year trying to engage with the school directly to try and get it to cut ties with academic institutions on illegal Israeli settlements. The encampment at the U of T is the latest on a Canadian campus as students join a wave of similar rallies being held in the United States. Police in Hanover, New Hampshire arrested around 90 protesters at a demonstration at Dartmouth College after an encampment there was torn down. College officials say many who were taken into custody were unaffiliated with Dartmouth. Police say the rally in support of the Palestinians in Gaza included both students and non-students. A number of people were charged with criminal trespassing and resisting arrest. A key focus by the protesters was demanding that Dartmouth divest from companies connected to Israel. U.S. President Joe Biden says student protests linked to the Israel-Hamas war have not prompted him to rethink his Middle East policies. Biden defended the right to free speech, but says order must prevail.
We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard, In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But, neither are we a lawless country. We are a civil society, and order must prevail.
Police have begun cracking down on encampments erected on U.S. college grounds. They're showing solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. Well, we enjoyed quite a bit of moisture lately here in southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Roger is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, how long will the rain mixed with snow continue for our region?
Well, it does look like we could see the possibility of flurries lasting into Friday, Hal, and I have to chuckle at how you say that we've been enjoying it, because I, for one, am a sunshine girl for sure. But I know that our ranchers and farmers have been enjoying all this moisture. So for them, I celebrate it. Although we haven't had as much moisture as we originally anticipated, we could see another 60% chance tonight and another 60% chance of flurries into Friday. But then we are going to get back up into those double digits, more seasonal for this time of year. So 12 degrees is the expected high before we get into Saturday, which we're going to see the sun shine again. And I'll be back later in the show to give you more details about that.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Fortunately, the wet weather has been helping firefighters battle a number of blazes here in our province. Emergency officials offered an update today on the wildfire situation in Alberta. There are currently 43 active wildfires burning, with 28 of them carryovers from previous years. Fortunately, 93% are under control, and the other 7% are currently being held.
There are no wildfires categorized as out of control and no wildfires of note. To date, we've had 249 wildfires start in 2024 that have burned a total of 5,586 hectares of land. As the minister said, recent cooler weather and precipitation has meant wildfire activity has been more subdued this week. We've managed to extinguish a number of wildfires, including some of those carryover wildfires that have been burning since last year. However, in areas with built-up drought conditions, it is still easy for some warm, dry, windy days to raise the wildfire danger level again.
Alberta Forestry Minister Todd Loewen says the best way to combat wildfires this season is to be vigilant.
If you see fire smoke on the horizon, report it as soon as possible and make sure you're staying up to date on all fire bans, restrictions, and advisories. As we've been saying over the past few weeks, 67% of wildfires are human-caused, meaning wildfire prevention is a responsibility shared by all. With Alberta Forest Week just around the corner, there's no better time than now to take extra precautions to safeguard our province's incredible ecosystems that benefit Albertans in countless ways.
The province is investing close to $1 million to support community justice initiatives. Officials say it'll better serve the unique needs of Alberta communities through a process that includes cultural sensitivity. Justice Minister Mickey Amory says this fiscal year, 39 grant recipients across the province received funding, including 5 here in southern Alberta. Their groups support families and Indigenous-based organizations.
The wide variety of recipients will ensure that these services can reach Albertans all across the province and will provide advice, information, and other supports to those navigating the legal system, including seniors, at-risk youth, low-income individuals, Indigenous, Métis, and other marginalized and racialized communities. Some of the successful recipients deal with criminal matters, some with family matters, and others that cover multiple areas of law, including criminal, civil, and family. So there is a wide variety of support out there for Albertans to access through this grant program.
Senators, campaigners, and employees of federally funded agencies are calling on the Trudeau government to ban the use of public funds to pay for settlements that include non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs. Manitoba Senator Marilu McFedrin says this bill will, quote, stop the money.
My bill is S261, and it's entitled the Can't Buy Silence Act. Tabled on May 9th last year, it will change 2 federal laws, the Parliament of Canada Act and the Financial Administration Act, in order to stop the use of non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, to cover up wrongdoing caused by harassment, discrimination, or violence by any entity funded by federal and therefore public funds. This bill follows stops the money. And that means that it will make it impossible to use federal monies for such NDAs on a go-forward basis. The bill will galvanize changes in Parliament, House of Commons, and the Senate, the Library of Parliament, the Parliamentary Protective Services, as well as all other federally funded entities, including government departments such as the Department of Justice, Crown corporations such as the CBC, departmental corporations such as federally funded granting agencies, and non-governmental organizations that receive federal funding, such as Hockey Canada or Gymnastics Canada.
Stress, it affects so many of us, and we have stress, especially when it comes to the high cost of living these days. Talking about stress and its effects, being kind to those who are stressed, along with self-care, is pretty important in helping us deal with it. Even though we recently had Stress Awareness Month, it doesn't mean that we should let our guard down. John Thompson, Outreach and Education Supervisor of Lethbridge Family Services, says there are different types of stress that often impact people.
When we think about stress, it's important to recognize that there are many different kinds of stress that people face. So some of them could be financial stress, some could be job-related stress. Sometimes we have family situations that are stressful, and sometimes just our own emotional response to things can contribute to us experiencing stress. If we're under a lot of stress for a long time, that can have a cumulative effect on our physical health and our mental health. So Lethbridge Family Services Counseling, Outreach and Education can offer a number of different kinds of support. So individual counseling, family counseling, or counseling for kids, that we can be there to support people so that they can talk about the experience of being stressed. They can have a safe outlet to talk about the powerful feelings of that, and that maybe they can get connected to other resources in the community that can be helpful.
Thompson says stress does not cause mental illness, but he says it does have an impact on our overall well-being. You know, over the last couple of years, women's shelters in Alberta received over 59,000 calls for help due to domestic violence. Now that's an increase of 12.5% compared to previous years. Jill Young, CEO of YWCA for Lethbridge and District, says awareness and education play vital roles in helping to prevent domestic violence.
It's a combination of twofold. We see that increase in domestic violence and that potential of increased domestic violence, but we also see that increase in awareness and education, which is so important to the long-term goal of ending intimate partner violence. Domestic violence and intimate partner violence is not just a female issue. This does affect both men and women, although women are more heavily affected and have a larger percentage of reported intimate partner violence. But it's also important that we engage in that prevention side as well, because prevention is so important in the long-term impact of where we succeed as a community in ending gender-based violence.
The YWCA Lethbridge and District Harbour House received 1,988 crisis calls and sheltered 340 women and 82 kids. A former Lethbridge football player made history after becoming the first Lethbridge Collegiate Institute Rams player to be drafted into the NFL. Tanner McLaughlin was chosen by the Cincinnati Bengals last month in the 6th round, or 194th overall. McLaughlin graduated from LCI back in 2017 and returned to the school on Wednesday night. After graduating from LCI, he played football at Southern Utah University and in Arizona. He currently holds the University of Arizona school reception record with 79 receptions. The 6'5" Canadian tight end says being drafted into the NFL is a dream come true, and he explains where he was when he first heard the news.
Yeah, I was back home. I was with my family, just hanging out, just did a little family thing, and I was fired up. Obviously, you know, it's a dream I've been chasing my whole life, so to get that call was pretty amazing for not only myself, but my family.
So how is it that a kid like you skips the CFL and goes right to the NFL? Talk to me.
You know, I just hard work. You know, CFL, I found out actually they drafted me yesterday as the 51st pick in the 6th round to the Stampeders, which again, super big blessing to have that, but just grateful, just blessed, and lots of hard work that went into it. Yeah, so you come in and you gotta compete for a spot. Obviously, I'm going against a bunch of professionals. They're all good at their craft. They've been playing for a long time. and I'm a rookie. So I got to come in, I got to work hard and compete and really just take somebody's spot.
His former head coach with the LCI Rams says McLaughlin was always a good teammate and did whatever it took to win games. He says he improved quite a bit as a player during his time here in Lethbridge.
We saw Tanner grow a lot while he was here at LCI. He came into us probably a little undersized, enthusiastic, but undersized for sure. And then we just saw him go through a growth spurt, and he became an elite receiver in our league. A pleasure to coach always. Really good attitude, willing to do the little things. As a receiver, sometimes it's easy just to, hey, I just catch passes around here. That's what I do. What I remember most about Tanner was his willingness to be a good teammate, to do the little things on a run play, right? In high school football, you run the ball a lot. He was always willing to block, find work downfield. So always really impressed by that. He was just willing to do whatever we asked him.
Now, this season's 2024 NFL Draft actually saw 4 players drafted from Canada. The other 3 were Isaiah Adams, a native of Ajax, Ontario, taken by the Arizona Cardinals. The New York Giants chose Theo Johnson from Windsor, Ontario, and the Detroit Lions selected Giovanni Manu, who's originally from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia. Congrats to all 4 players. You know, there's a group which is hoping to raise funds to help restore the legendary Roxy Theatre in Coleman, which is located in the Crow's Nest Pass. Fred Bradley is with the campaign Revive the Roxy Theatre. He says a big reason to restore the legendary facility is to help increase tourism in their region.
And this project can be transformational for our community by providing a cultural industry anchor for the economic renewal of a historic downtown that has suffered with the demise of our traditional resource industries over the past 40 years. And so having this multi-use performing arts center, it's going to be a cultural hub. It's actually a cultural industry for a community that hasn't got any resource industry anymore. This is a new industry for the Crow's Nest Pass, and it'll be a center for that.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Fred Bradley with Revive the Roxy Theatre and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. Well, we saw light flurries mixed in with some showers and fairly cool here in southwestern Alberta, but the flurries should be tapering off soon. Full weather details are coming up. We saw more of the white stuff again this morning, but not to the point of having to pull out a snow shovel here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, the little bit of dusting we received is nothing compared to what many near the foothills of the Rocky Mountains received.
Yeah, I'd say we got off pretty lucky if you don't like the snow, that is. However, if you do like the snow, then the foothills were definitely the place to be. The area southwest of Millerville, received 46 centimeters of snow, but most of those communities within the foothills received just over 20 centimeters. Not here, though. It barely stayed on the ground once it touched it down. But we could see a 60% chance of flurries overnight, and then another 60% chance on Friday, high of 12 degrees, 13 as we get into Saturday, and we're going to see the sunshine again that day. Clear skies. And then clouds moving in for Sunday, high of 10 degrees. We could see more clouds on Monday with up to 14 degrees there. And then showers beginning Monday night right through Wednesday. So we're seeing highs of 10 and 11 as we get into next Monday and Tuesday with those showers as well. So the average high for this time of year, 16, average low, 2 degrees, 28. That was our high temperature on this day. That happened back in 1940. And in 1954, we were sitting at minus 11, which was the coldest for this day. 6:05 is when the sun rose this morning. 8:52 is when our sun is setting this evening. 4 minutes longer of daylight than we saw yesterday. Okay, on the west coast tomorrow, Victoria looking at a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 15 and some onshore winds there, which would create a bit of a lower temperature by the water. Also a 30K wind in the 1 to Fuca Strait. 19 for a high in Vancouver with increasing clouds in the morning. Edmonton sitting at 12 degrees, clear skies there. And Calgary, after a chance of flurries tonight, we're going to see the sun shine there as well tomorrow with a high of 12 degrees. Now, as we get into Saskatoon, we are seeing a 30% chance of flurries or showers, high of 8 degrees. Now, Regina is expecting some periods of wet, heavy snow, switching to showers 5 degrees for a high there and high of 10 degrees in Winnipeg with showers. As we look into Toronto, we are seeing a 30% chance of showers. Could also see a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm there, high of 19 degrees. 20 for a high in Ottawa with a mix of sun and cloud, and sunshine expected tomorrow in Montreal with a high of 19 degrees. Getting into Atlantic Canada, Fredericton looking at mostly sunshine, 12 degrees for a high there. Halifax seeing a 30% chance of showers, 10 degrees there. 6 for a high in Charlottetown, up to 60% chance of showers there. And 2 to 4 millimeters of showers or drizzle expected tomorrow in St. John's with a high of 5 degrees. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
London Drugs says its phone lines are working again after being taken offline in response to a cybersecurity incident discovered on Sunday. A statement from the Richmond, BC-based pharmacy and retail chain says Canada Post offices inside of London Drug stores are up and running again. The company closed all of its more than 80 stores across Western Canada until further notice. It says the stores remain closed out of an abundance of caution, but customers are still being provided with urgent pharmacy care. London Drugs says the investigation is assessing the extent to which any data has been compromised, and people will be notified if personal information was affected. The chairman of Loblaw, Galen Weston, pushed back on what he called misguided criticism of the grocer as a boycott against the company gained steam online. Weston says as Canada's largest grocer, it's natural that they would be singled out as a focal point for government, media, and consumer frustrations. He says Loblaw continues to act with integrity. He says his company is not responsible for higher food prices and that inflation is a global issue. A Reddit page created for Canadians to complain about Loblaw and other major grocers had topped 67,000 members as of midday on Thursday. Loblaw's CEO, Per Bank, says he's optimistic his company can reach an agreement with Ottawa on a grocery code of conduct. Loblaw and Walmart have been holdouts in the code intended to promote fair dealing in the industry. Officials at both grocers say it would raise prices for consumers. Bank's comments came as Loblaw raised its quarterly dividend by 15% and reported its first quarter profit and revenue, which rose from a year ago. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 94 points on the day to finish at 21,823. The Dow was up 322 points to 38,225. The S&P 500 was up 45 on the day to 5,064, and the Nasdaq was up 235 points to 15,840. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 5 cents to $78.95 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 10 cents to $2.04 US. Gold was down $15.73 on the day to $23.0383 US an ounce, and silver was up 3 cents to $26.68 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.84 per bushel, barley's at $6.42, canola's at $14.44, and corn is at $7.93 per bushel. Live cattle June contract was up $2.95 to $176.80. Feeder cattle were up $2.18 to $243.60, and lean hogs were up 5 cents to $93.08. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 73.13 US. Recapping one of our top stories, a former Lethbridge football player made history after becoming the first Lethbridge Collegiate Institute Rams player to be drafted into the NFL. Tanner McLaughlin was chosen by the Cincinnati Bengals last month in the 6th round, or 194th overall. McLaughlin graduated from LCI back in 2017 and returned to the school on Wednesday night. After graduating from LCI, he played football at Southern Utah University and in Arizona. He currently holds the University of Arizona Schools reception record with 79 receptions. Congratulations. You know, there's a movement afoot in the Crow's Nest Pass here in Alberta to revive the Roxy Theatre. BCN's Jeanette Rocher will have details for us momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews.
The Roxy Theatre in Coleman, Alberta has been nominated as one of 12 finalists for the National Trust for Canada's The Next Great Save competition this year. The theatre itself is a National Historic Site in the municipality of Crow's Nest Pass. So joining me today from the Crow's Nest Pass to discuss this and talk all about the Roxy is Fred Bradley. And many of you may remember Fred as the former MLA for the Pincher Creek area from 1975 through 1993. That's a long time. Welcome to Bridge City News, Fred. Great to have you on.
Great to be on your broadcast, and that was a long 30 years ago when I left office.
Right, but you were in there for a long time. But maybe can you share some more details about this competition that the Roxy Theatre now finds itself in?
Well, the National Trust for Canada, which is Canada's leading heritage organization, has this project called the Next Great Save Contest.
Okay.
And the Roxy Theatre is one of 12 finalists across the country to be entered into this contest. And the contest awards the participant with the greatest number of votes, $50,000 for first place. In second place, $10,000, and third place, $5,000. So our community is our project, we applied and we were successful. So we're really excited by that, and it's been a great opportunity for us to create awareness about the Roxy Theatre and to get people to support our project. And we've had overwhelming community support. Our challenge now is to grow our vote out, to get more votes from people outside our community who support the arts, who support restoration of historic buildings, and who also may be aware of the communities in the Crow's Nest Pass have suffered economically over the last 40 years. And this would be a very important project of renewal and economic revitalization in one of the historic downtowns. Coleman is a National Historic Site. The Roxy Theatre is a Provincial Historic Resource declared in 2022. And this is the concept is to restore this building as a community performing arts center. But the contest goes until May the 5th, 5 more days of voting, and people can vote each and every day on the nextgreatsave.ca website.
Okay, so voting deadline is Monday, May the 5th. In order to win, you need to get people to put in their votes for the Roxy Theatre. So how can viewers go about casting their votes?
Well, you go to nextgreatsave.ca, and there's a gallery of the 12 finalists. You go down to the Roxy Theatre, click Vote Now. You have to fill in your email address. And once you do that, you submit that. They will then say they've sent a confirming email back to that email address. You open your email, you have to validate your vote there, and then it comes back to the screen and you vote, count my vote. So it's about a 4-vote process.
Well, maybe share some of the key reasons why the Roxy Theatre in Coleman was selected as one of the finalists for the competition. What makes it so special?
Well, the Roxy has played an integral role in the cultural life of the community of Coleman as a performance theater and a movie theater, a performance center movie theater. And it's iconic. It's a historic landmark building with pristine acoustics and classic lines, and one of 3 surviving Quonset hut style theaters in Canada, believe it or not. So it's really a unique project. As you can look in the photo behind me, you can see the Quonset in the back of it. The front is a 2-story brick building. But these Quonset-style theaters occurred after the end of the Second World War. The United States Air Force had 140,000 surplus airplane hangars. 140 of those became theaters. Today, there's less than 20 left in North America, only 3 in Canada, and the Roxy Theatre is one of those. So it's, in terms of a heritage building, it's a very rare thing in Canada. And there's the other 2 are one's in Wainwright, Alberta, the other is in Victoria, BC, and the one in Victoria is closed. So from that perspective, it is very important. And so that's the preservation arguments. We're going to preserve a historic building that, before the local community group purchased it, there was a group going to purchase it, and they're going to tear down the Quonset part of the building. And we said, no, we need to move. We can repurpose this building. There's a real need. So saving the building from destruction was one of the objects. The second was we have a really surviving, I don't know how to say surviving is the wrong word, a very really great group of performance artists, musicians in the community who need a place to play. So a revived Roxy, a restored Roxy, will become an arts and cultural hub for the community and a social gathering place for the community, for performing artists, musicians, dancers, and for young people to perform on the stage. And our movie theater closed in 2019, so people will be able to watch movies again on the big screen. You know, I think as a youth, the first movie I went to with my parents, I was 5 or 6 years, maybe 6, 7 years old. Well, there's been for the last 5 years, young people in the Crow's Nest Pass of that age group haven't been able to go to a big screen. Their parents have had to take them out of the community. Yeah. Similarly, the Turning Point Dance Studio, which is great young performers, for them to do their annual concert, they go to Lethbridge on the 8th stage. Now, that's great for Lethbridge. But the economic benefit of that, the Turning Point Dance Studio said there's about approximately $200,000 because people go stay overnight with their children, go to the performances, the hospitality industry, et cetera, benefits in Lethbridge. Well, we would like to have that happen here in the Crow's Nest Pass. Similarly, our Crow's Nest Pass Symphony Orchestra, which is actually one of the oldest amateur symphony orchestras in Canada, is going to be 100 years old in 2026. Well, we would like to have them perform that 100th anniversary concert on the stage of the Roxy. And there's so many other groups. We have 2 theatrical groups, our community choir, a lot of individual musicians who would like to be on that stage. And we're going to have youth activities, programming for youth, and get them engaged. Our young people tell us, we don't have anything to do at night. Well, this would give them something. Go to a movie, see a performance, actually have other youth programming in the building. So it's going to do that, many different things for our community. Plus, we can bring in top-notch acts that can perform on that stage. Traveling musicians who play in Cranbrook or Fort Macleod or Lethbridge would have a place to play here also.
Definitely. Okay, so it shows movies, it's a venue for live entertainment, and you mentioned musicians, and I understand that the Crow's Nest Orchestra has a short video appeal to cast your vote for them, right?
They do.
So maybe we can play that clip right now.
Cast your vote today. We're the Crow's Nest Community Orchestra, and you need a place to play.
Well, okay, so that is fabulous. Fred, how many can the theater actually seat? How many people can fit in there?
We expect to 265 seats. Originally, it was 335 seats. And with putting a stage in, we'll think we comfortably fit 250 to 275. That really hasn't been determined exactly yet because we're working on those plans. That's going to be putting in the new seats. Maybe one of the last things we do. We want to get the building up and ready for that, and that is a big project. And maybe we can review what we've done to date on that.
Yeah. So part of the vision for the Roxy Theater, if you win these funds, is to get it restored, get it reopened. You know, it's been closed down since 2003, right? So is it viable? Do you think to reopen?
Well, it has sat empty for the last 20 years. The last time it was occupied was Ralph Thurn, who is a Juno-winning CBC producer from Calgary, came down and actually converted the movie theater to a performance stage to put on performances. And the Lost Creek fire in 2003, so smoky in here that, you know, you have to have audiences, and people stayed away. So he decided to close it. So it's been closed for the last 20 years. Yes, it is a viable project. We've had engineering studies, restoration studies look at it. And with the first phase of the project was to buy the theater. We raised over $65,000 to do that in 2020. So that showed there was community support. Then we with matching government grants, we got engineering studies done, which the engineering studies, we've got the engineering studies done. And then the first phase was last year, where the most important thing about any historic structure is to maintain its structural integrity. So the first thing we had done was last year with grants from the federal and provincial government and a generous support of Tech Coal. who's our major industry on the BC side of the border. We don't have any industry here in the Crow's Nest Pass anymore to support this. They donated $250,000. So we had over $500,000 of work last year that went into to restore the foundation. So the foundation has been totally restored. We took out in the interior of the building, removed the some of the hazardous materials, etc. So the interior is ready to move in to put in heating, HVAC, audio, lighting, the new seats, refurbish it, and we restored the roof on the Quonset building, and we need to redo the obviously make sure that the Quonset hut itself is restored also. So it'll be that we have to do some work on the exterior of that, but our big project with the $50,000, because we can get some matching grants next year,
I was going to
is to
say
restore the
that
facade.
what you're talking about sounds like a lot more than $50,000, unfortunately, because just things are so expensive these days. So yeah, I was going to say, are you going to be needing more funds, and are you getting any donors that are saying, hey, I'll match that?
Well, the $50,000 is going to go to help us restore the facade. As you can see, the facade,
There it is,
the
behind
Roxy
your
sign.
head there. I love
Yeah,
that
the Roxy sign, the aluminum facade, all the brick, the glass block building blocks that are in it, the classic lines of it, the theater doors. So 50,000 is going to help us with that. We've had an anonymous donor said, if you win the contest, we will donate $50,000 also. So we're really out there on this campaign is worth $100,000 if we get to the top. But we're behind, and that's why we're really working hard to see if we can get those extra votes to move us closer to that goal.
Well, then you probably answered my next question, which is what kind of feedback are you getting from the locals? Is there enough excitement for residents of the area to attend events and to financially support it?
Well, we've had a lot of tremendous community support. I mean, our fundraising committee has gone out and hosted a number of events. One of them was recently a play, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but they had to perform it in a church basement. We just don't have that type of performance facility. So they raised money with that. We have a violin auction that's going on. Someone generously donated 40 violins, and artists have painted those, and those are currently on auction site at our and can be found on our webpage, roxytheatrecmp.com and the Crow's Nest Can Do website. So there is a lot of community support for this. We're getting from all the artist groups, the performing groups, young people, students at the high school, the Turning Point Dance Studio, the orchestra, individual musicians. There's a great support, and we've got a great base of support in the Crow's Nest Pass. We've got about 1,500 people who voted for the project so far.
It's so important for the next generations to remember the heritage and the history of the area that they grew up in, isn't it?
Yes, so that is important.
What is your favorite memory of the Roxy Theater, Fred?
Well, I remember once going there, and they had I think it was Ravine, the musician, and they tries to hypnotize people from the audience. Before I knew it, I was up on stage, hypnotized, and couldn't remember my name. So, who are you?
Remember your own name?
No, so that's one of my biggest recollections of being in the Roxy. What I wanted to mention was that we know Canadians believe in the importance and vibrancy of the country's cultural industries. And our Roxy Theatre project is a competition, a way for Canadians to show their active support for the arts. And we know that funding for arts organizations declined from governments and at local levels, federal levels, and corporate donors. So we're fortunate to have tech support. So this project is really important that we value the arts in our community and want our artists to have a home to display their craft. And this project can be transformational for our community by providing a cultural industry anchor for the economic renewal of a historic downtown that has suffered with the demise of our traditional resource industries over the past 40 years. And so having this multi-use performing arts center, it's going to be a cultural hub. It's actually a cultural industry for a community that hasn't got any resource industry anymore. This is a new industry for the Crow's Nest Pass, and it'll be a center for that. So that's another very important aspect of this project. Now, if you ask me how you can vote.
Yes, one more time. Just remind our viewers where they should go to cast their votes.
Yes, we need every vote we can get, and we appreciate the support of everyone in Southern Alberta and beyond. If you can vote for the Roxy Theatre, we really appreciate your support. Help us open this theatre so our youth have a place to play, and go vote at www.nextgradesave.ca and click on the Roxy Theatre and vote today and every day until May 3rd, May 6th, because it's a cumulative voting contest. So your vote, there's 5 more days to vote. Vote every day. We appreciate your support. To encourage votes, we are having a vote-a-thon with performances by local musicians starting at 4 o'clock on Sunday night. And this vote-a-thon is going to go as long as we have the musicians and performers to play. It starts at 4 o'clock. We may go all night. It's a vote-a-thon to vote for the Roxy. So it's going to be on Facebook Live. Just people go to Facebook Live on Sunday night. You should find us on Facebook Live under the Roxy Theatre or one of the other groups. And please watch it, and please encourage people to vote for the Roxy. But our vote-a-thon, that's what we're counting to really grow our vote to get us over the top by engaging people here and around the world in this very important project to not only preserve a historic building, but to create this performance stage for our youth and the people of our community.
Amazing. Thanks so much for all you do for the community, Fred. So great to have you on today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
There are a lot of companies trying to come up with cleaner and more efficient energy. One of the most interesting types of energy being talked about right now is hydrogen. What is it? How does it work? We're going to find out from our guest today. He joins us now from Calgary, Dave Van den Assem. He's the Director of Clean Technology from the Hydrogen Center of Excellence. Dave, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Now, Dave, what is the Hydrogen Center of Excellence really all about?
Well, the Center of Excellence was set up about a year and a half ago now, maybe closer to 2 years ago. And it's designed to help integrate hydrogen into the energy system within Alberta, as well as provide some opportunities for low carbon energy exports outside of the province.
So where does your funding come from? Is it mostly from the government? Is it private funding?
We received $50 million from the government of Alberta to set up and operate the Center of Excellence through to March 2026. Of that money, we have allocated $38 million towards technology development, $10 million towards building facilities and testing equipment, and $4 million towards studies and public awareness and codes and standards support and development. We've received matching funding from Natural Resources Canada, our federal friends, for $15 million to support technology development. And we've received $3 million from our Prairies Economic Development Canada, our other federal friends, for an additional $3 million. We anticipate that we should be able to see projects, technology development projects primarily, that will add up to about $300 million or more. So there's some good leverage for an initial $50 million investment.
So Dave, with Bridge City News, we not only like to inform people, but we like to educate them as well. So let me ask you something. How is hydrogen produced? Does it mainly come from natural gas?
Well, we certainly have a lot of natural gas here, and it's abundant and inexpensive, so it makes a lot of sense for us to produce it from natural gas. One can also produce hydrogen from splitting water molecules. It's called electrolysis. So both are legitimate, commercially available technologies, and it really depends on where the resources are most abundant and available.
I've heard that hydrogen is potentially a renewable resource by a process that basically uses sunlight and water. Is that true?
That's the electrolysis process I was mentioning. So one can take solar energy, convert it to electricity, or wind energy, or hydro power, convert it to electricity, and use that electricity to split water molecules into their component hydrogen and oxygen parts. And of course, we take the hydrogen and use that for various applications.
So what kinds of things are we able to use hydrogen fuel for? Can we use it to power our vehicles, our homes, or even commercially?
those are some really good options. There's hydrogen is best used where it's difficult to decarbonize through other means. And we're finding that the most traction we're getting, the most interest and the best opportunities are in transportation, especially heavy freight and commercial freight transportation, such as big trucks and trains. One can also use it for heating in residential and commercial applications. And we also have a tremendous opportunity to provide another low carbon export product because there are other regions around the world that are really interested in our low cost, low carbon intensity hydrogen.
Yeah, didn't Germany come knocking recently and talk to our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, about tapping into some of our hydrogen here, and Trudeau kind of pushed them aside?
I can't recall the exact details of how all that worked, but I know that there are some natural benefits to producing hydrogen using the available wind resources, for example, in the East Coast, to electrolyze water and have a short trip to across the ocean to Germany, Netherlands, UK, other countries that are also interested in hydrogen. For us in the West, we're actually really close to, or reasonably close to, Asian markets such as Japan and South Korea, and there's quite a bit of interest from those countries in our low cost, low carbon intensity hydrogen.
So, Dave, how green really is hydrogen fuel? To what degree does it actually lower emissions?
Well, there's a number of different ways to produce hydrogen, and each one has its own carbon footprint, shall we say. And one can optimize that carbon footprint in terms of either capturing carbon that is produced during the process, or in some cases, not produce carbon dioxide at all. And so it really, there's a broad range. So here in Alberta, we're really good at capturing carbon dioxide and sequestering it underground. We have tremendous expertise in that area. We've been doing it for decades. So, so that allows us to use natural gas as a feedstock to produce hydrogen, capture the carbon, and produce low carbon emissions products. When we have abundant renewable resources, renewable power, and water, together we can produce hydrogen through the electrolysis process I mentioned earlier. That is also low carbon intensity. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and we have the ability to do all of those, really.
And we need, especially with the emergency we had with our grid recently, where we had to actually end up borrowing power from Saskatchewan here. Dave, do you think Alberta is in a position to be a global leader when it comes to hydrogen production? I mean, Premier Daniel Smith seems to think so.
Well, I happen to agree with her, and we are already Canada's largest producer of hydrogen by a long margin. We're currently using it for industrial processes, upgrading hydrocarbons or manufacturing fertilizer and other things. This is an expansion of that capability into new market areas that we're building. We are quite, because of our pedigree, our experience in working with hydrogen, we have some natural advantages over other regions in the world that can't produce it or don't know how or don't have the expertise or infrastructure. So I think we have a great position to be able to take advantage of this wave that's coming.
So how can we maybe take things to the next level and tap into maybe other markets around the world and really expand our hydrogen production?
Well, one of the biggest volume opportunities that we have for hydrogen production and use is by exporting it as a product. One can export hydrogen either as the gas, which is two hydrogen atoms together as a molecule, and ship that as a gas, or we have other forms that contain a lot of hydrogen and no carbon that we can also use. Ammonia is one. It's a liquid at warmer temperatures than hydrogen liquefies, and so it's a little easier to move. We know how to move liquids quite well, So there's a lot of different ways to get it to the markets we need.
I've heard some concerns, Dave, about the safety of hydrogen use. Are there any risks involved?
Well, there's risks involved with everything, but I think the key is to ensure that we have a rigorous and well put together set of codes and standards and regulations, which are there to ensure that safety is being maintained and preserved. We have been using natural gas for decades, and we do that very safely. And we can do the same thing with hydrogen. There's already, hundreds of kilometers of pipelines for hydrogen in operation, have been in operation for decades. As I mentioned, it's an industrial chemical. So it's being used safely. It's more expanding those codes and standards and regulations to encompass these new market opportunities. And so those processes are in place. A lot of smart people working on that, trying to get that set up. So we're very excited for that.
But what are some of the potential dangers when it comes to hydrogen use?
Well, hydrogen is a gas like natural gas. So if it's anywhere near flames, then it will ignite. It's the same as natural gas. So we want to make sure that it's controlled and it's contained, and that we have the appropriate detection mechanisms, the appropriate safety mechanisms in place to ensure that these things are under control.
So I understand that the cost of producing hydrogen fuel is sometimes part of the challenge. What kind of progress is being made in this area?
Well, there's some great progress being made currently in terms of getting larger scale production developed, so that we have those economies of scale. So the larger the facility, if it's a centralized facility, the lower the unit cost, or the lower the cost per kilogram, for example, of the hydrogen produced. And so there's Air Products announced earlier their $1.6 billion blue hydrogen hub in Edmonton that's going to produce a tremendous amount of hydrogen that's going to serve the industrial market as well as some of these emerging opportunities. And several others are planning, announcing, and in development with projects as well. There's also a number of low carbon emissions ammonia projects that are also being announced and contemplated in the province. So it's going to be a tremendous boom in economic activity in the province should all these projects go ahead.
Let's circle back to hydrogen and vehicles as a fuel source for just a moment here, Dave. If we see continued investment in hydrogen and if the price comes down, what kind of a timeline are we talking about to see proper infrastructure for fueling stations put in place to make hydrogen vehicles a reality?
There's a lot of work being done in that area. A lot of the fueling station providers are starting to work their way into the ecosystem here, which is great to see. A lot of interest. And if one produces or builds a fueling station, there has to be vehicles to fuel. So we have an interesting situation where we're starting from scratch with a new industry, essentially. And so we have to make sure that we're doing it in a way that provides the certainty of demand, so the producers are interested in producing the hydrogen, but the end users are there as well to use it. So we have to build that up in pieces, and that's where you see a lot of the hydrogen hub activity in the province. We have the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub that's established, and they're doing some great things in there. There's one fueling station operating currently in Edmonton. It's commercial, not generally for the public yet. It's because it's for the big trucks. But we are in discussions with, and there's a lot of planning going on for other hubs in the province. And they will be building their own infrastructure as well. And then when we get the interconnectivity of those hubs, then we have a network. And that makes it a whole lot easier to go from location to location and have certainty that you have fuel there waiting for you.
I remember my wife's family had this old Chevy Suburban. It was a gas-powered vehicle, and they converted it over to propane. And that was quite interesting, you know, when they went down to the United States touring, especially the West Coast Highway 101, they had to make sure there was a gas station that actually had propane so they could fill up. I wonder if we'd see something like that when it comes to hydrogen. Just convert it over to hydrogen, no big deal.
Well, yeah, these things evolve over time. The same conversation we were having a little while ago about electric charging stations, and the infrastructure started to show up more and more locations. We're starting to get it integrated into building design, into different applications here. So we're starting to see more and more of that. But in the early days of electric vehicles, not too long ago, folks had to do the same thing. They had to go, okay, well, how far can I get with this charge? How long do I need to stay there to recharge it? And now they're becoming more common. So it evolves over time, and it starts with these discrete chunks of development.
Now, what about the agriculture sector? Does hydrogen maybe have the potential to be a game changer for that industry as well?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways to look at that, and it's potentially very exciting. So one is providing a decarbonized fuel that can replace diesel in particular for the heavy duty applications that are again hard to decarbonize. So there's one opportunity. The other opportunity is in the production of hydrogen. There's a couple of a handful of organizations in the province that produce bioethanol that can then be converted into hydrogen. So SBI is one. I've got the other name here. Azola Hydrogen's another one. There's a few of them out there that are doing it. So the nice thing about that is ethanol is easy to transport and store. Much easier than hydrogen. So they do that, and then you produce the hydrogen on demand at the fueling station. So it's a real smart idea in a lot of ways.
Dave Van Den Assem is the Director of Clean Technology with the Hydrogen Center of Excellence. Thanks so much, Dave, for joining us today from Calgary.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.